I never thought a random Tuesday evening could turn into something that felt like it was ripped from one of those indie movies you only half believe until it happens to you. I was waiting on the train platform, the usual miserable rush hour crowd packed around me, all of us staring down at our phones or pretending to be busy with anything but the fact that we were all stuck. It was one of those gray, drizzly days in the city where the light barely comes through, and honestly, I was just ready to get home and collapse. Then, out of nowhere, this guy showed up, dragging an accordion case behind him. Not exactly the scene you expect on a subway platform during the 6 p.m. crush, right? He was probably in his late 20s, mid-20s. Hard to say exactly. He had this kind of casually messy hair that looked like he didn't care but totally did, and these deep brown eyes that seemed to cut through the foggy air like they were lit from the inside. He set down the case, popped it open, and without a word, started playing. But here's the thing. It wasn't just random accordion jazz or some old folk tune. It was this slow, haunting melody that somehow made the whole platform quiet down around us. People stopped scrolling, stopped shuffling their feet. The city's noise just faded into the background. And if I'm being honest, in that moment, it felt like it was just him and me. Like somehow, he was playing that song just for me. I didn't know what to do at first. I mean, you don't expect to have an impromptu private concert while waiting for your train. But there was something about the way he played, like he was telling a story through the music, a story only I could hear. I caught his eye once, and there was this brief flicker of a smile, like he was daring me to listen closer, to really see him. The platform lights flickered above us, and I swear, every note wrapped around me tighter than the cold wind did. I was supposed to be annoyed, or at least indifferent, but instead, I felt this sudden pull, an urge to stay and not let that moment slip away. I wanted to know who he was, why he was there, and what that song meant. When the song ended, the world snapped back. Phones buzzed, shoes shuffled, and the train's rumble grew louder. He looked at me again, that same half-smile lingering, then packed up his accordion like he'd just done what he came to do. And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving me standing there wondering if I was the only one who heard the music meant just for me. I wanted to find him, to ask why he played that song, but the platform was empty again, and the train was pulling in. So I got on, clutching that strange, electric feeling, not knowing that night was just the beginning of something I never expected. The train doors slid shut behind me, and as it pulled away from the platform, I found myself pressed against the window, eyes still searching the crowd outside. But he was gone. No sign of the accordion guy anywhere. The city blurred past, lights flashing in streaks, but all I could think about was that song and those eyes. It was strange how a simple melody could stick with you, haunting your thoughts long after the last note faded. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was just tired and a bit too caught up in the day's monotony. But that song, it wasn't just music. It felt like a message, a secret shared between two strangers in a sea of strangers. I kept replaying it in my mind, trying to catch the feeling again, wondering if it was just me or if maybe he'd done that for someone else before. The next day, I found myself back at the same platform, almost hoping to catch a glimpse of him again. It was ridiculous. What were the odds? Yet I stood there, scanning every face, half expecting the accordion case to roll behind someone's feet, or for that familiar messy hair to peek out from the crowd. Hours passed. No accordion, no music, just the steady hum of the city and the usual subway announcements. I was about to give up when my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Jonah. "Dude, you okay? You sounded kind of weird last night." I smiled, fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing back. "I saw someone. Played an accordion on the platform. Played a song for me. Or at least, it felt like it." Jonah's reply was almost immediate. "Bro, you're wild. Maybe you're just missing a good love story or something." I laughed to myself, but honestly, I wasn't sure if I was just missing a story or if a story was actually starting. That evening, on the way home, I was in the exact same spot again. Not because I expected anything, but because I couldn't stop thinking about him. The platform was quieter this time, Fewer people. Just as I was about to check the train schedule on my phone, I heard it, a faint melody floating through the air. My heart leapt. I turned to see him, sitting on the edge of the platform, accordion resting on his knees, fingers dancing across the keys. He didn't notice me at first, so I stayed back, watching. The melody was different this time. Brighter, lighter, like a conversation without words. When the song ended, he looked up, finally spotting me standing there like an idiot. Our eyes met, and this time he didn't look away. Instead, he smiled that same crooked smile. "Hey," he said, his voice low but unmistakably warm. "Hey, I managed," feeling my throat dry up. "You play a lot here?" he shrugged, a little sheepish. "When the mood strikes. This city's got stories, and sometimes I like to add mine." "I'm glad you did," I said, feeling the words come easier than I expected. He packed up his accordion slowly, like he wasn't quite ready to leave the moment behind. "I'm Luca." I stuck out my hand, which he shook firmly. "Eli, Eli," he repeated, as if tasting the name. Then, "You're the guy who was standing there like he'd just heard something important." "That you?" "Guilty," I said, laughing. "I guess I was hoping you'd play again." "That's the plan," he grinned, "but only if you stick around." For some reason, it felt like a promise. We walked together to the edge of the platform, waiting for the train. The conversation started slow. Small talk about the city, music, the weirdness of playing accordion in a place where everyone's usually in too much of a hurry to notice. But then it shifted. We started sharing little things, how sometimes the noise makes you feel invisible, how music can make you feel seen. When the train came, we didn't get on right away. Instead, we leaned against the railing, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun dipped below the skyline. A comfortable silence settled between us, one that didn't need to be filled. "Why accordion?" I asked finally. "Not exactly the first thing you see around here." Lucas smiled, this time without the hint of mystery. "It's the one instrument that feels like life. Push and pull, loud and quiet, complicated but simple. Kind of like us, I guess." I nodded, feeling something inside me loosen. It was crazy how a chance encounter could unravel all the walls I'd built. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this. Open. The train came again, and this time, we stepped on together. The car was mostly empty, and we found seats side by side. He started humming softly, fingers tapping on his knees in rhythm. "So," Lucas said, "think you'll be here tomorrow?" I laughed. "I thought you'd never ask." That night, I fell asleep with his song playing in my head, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just waiting to get home. I was waiting to see where this would go. The next evening, I found myself back on the platform again, heart a little quicker than usual, scanning the crowd for that familiar messy hair and the worn leather strap of an accordion case. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I finally spotted him leaning against the wall near the stairs, casually tuning his accordion like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Hey, Eli," Luca called when he saw me. His voice had this easy rhythm to it, like he was glad I was here but not surprised. "Hey, Luca," I smiled, stepping closer. "So, what's tonight's track?" He grinned, opening the accordion. "Improvised. You in the mood for a private concert again? Or should I just scare off the usual crowd?" "Private, definitely," I said, feeling my cheeks warm. Something about hearing him say my name out loud made the moment feel more real. He launched into a melody that felt like a conversation, sometimes playful, sometimes somber, like he was telling me something without words, but with every squeeze and stretch of the accordion's bellows. I caught myself swaying slightly, caught up in the rhythm and the way the music wrapped around the damp evening air. When he finished, he looked up at me, eyes bright. "So? Am I getting better at this? You're incredible." My voice was quieter than I meant it to be, but I didn't care. "Seriously, you could make the whole city stop." He chuckled and packed up the accordion, but didn't move away. "I'm glad you stopped by." I don't usually stick around after playing. I shrugged, feeling a little vulnerable but honest. I don't usually stand on train platforms waiting for accordion players either. "But you're different." There was a beat of silence, and then he smiled that crooked smile again. Different's good. I like different. We leaned back against the wall, the noise of the city humming around us but somehow feeling miles away. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I didn't want the night to end. So I said, trying to sound casual, "What's your story?" I mean, besides mysterious accordion guy, he looked at me like he was considering how much to share. I play because I guess it's the only way I can breathe sometimes. Growing up, music was my escape. The accordion, weird as it is, just stuck with me. My family's from the south of Italy. My abuela taught me a few songs when I was a kid. It's kind of my way to stay connected. That's really cool, I said, genuinely interested. I never would have guessed. Lucas shrugged, eyes tracing the path of the train tracks below. Most people don't guess much about me. I smiled. Well, I want to guess more. He met my gaze, and for a moment, the city noise faded again. Maybe you'll get the chance. Days turned into a rhythm after that, me finding Luca on the platform, us sharing songs and stories between trains. He taught me a few basics on the accordion, laughing when I couldn't get the squeezes right. I told him about my work, boring office stuff that made me daydream of things like impromptu concerts and late-night talks with strangers. One evening, as we sat on a bench near the station, the city lights shimmering on the wet pavement, Luca pulled his jacket tighter around him. You ever feel like the city's too loud but also too empty? Every day, I admitted. It's like being surrounded but still alone. I looked at him, the way his eyes caught the streetlight, soft and open. I didn't expect to find someone who feels that way too. He smiled, a little softly this time. Yeah, me neither. I realized then how much I wanted to cross that invisible line from strangers sharing songs to something more. But there was always that small voice in my head, reminding me of all the times things hadn't worked out, or the risk of opening up and getting burned. Still, sitting there with Luca, the weight of that fear felt lighter. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Anything. Why do you keep coming back? I'm not exactly easy to find, and I'm definitely not the easiest person to know. I thought about it, because you make me feel like there's a story worth hearing again, like maybe I'm not just passing through. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. You're not just passing through, Eli. That simple touch sent a jolt through me, the kind that makes your heartbeat race and your mind go blank all at once. Our eyes locked, and suddenly, I wasn't just a guy waiting for a train anymore. I was standing on the edge of something that felt like the start of a new song, one I wanted to keep playing. But just as I was about to say something that mattered, the distant rumble of an arriving train filled the air, snapping us back. Luca glanced toward the tracks, then back at me. Guess this is my stop. I nodded, trying to hold on to the moment a little longer. Until next time, he smiled, that same crooked grin spreading across his face. Until next time. And as he disappeared into the crowd, accordion case in hand, I realized I was already counting the minutes until I'd see him again. The days that followed felt like I was living in one of those moments you sometimes catch yourself in and think, this could change everything. I kept finding reasons to linger near that platform, even when I didn't have to be there. Part of me worried I looked ridiculous, some guy hanging around just to see if a stranger with an accordion would show up again. But that didn't stop me from hoping. And Luca showed up, almost like clockwork, clutching that battered accordion, always with a faint smile that made the world seem a little less heavy. One afternoon, after a long day where everything at work had been a grind, I found Luca sitting on the steps leading down to the platform, the accordion resting across his knees like an old friend. Hey, I said, letting myself fall into the seat beside him. He looked up, eyes soft. You look like you've had a day, I sighed, the kind where you wonder why you even bother sometimes. He nodded, as if he understood that feeling too well. After a moment, he started playing a slow, tender melody, quiet enough that only I could truly hear it over the bustle of the city. It wasn't just music. It was an invitation, a gentle presence in the chaos. When the song ended, he looked over at me, and this time, I caught the trace of something more. Vulnerability, maybe, or courage. Eli, he said quietly, can I ask you something? Shoot. Would you want to get coffee sometime? Not just on the platform, but somewhere that doesn't smell like train grease. I blinked, caught off guard, but definitely not unhappy. Yeah, I'd like that. He smiled, a little relieved, I think. Cool. I know this place that does espresso like it's a religion. It turned out that Luca's life wasn't just accordion melodies played between train schedules. Over coffee in a tiny cafe tucked away from the city noise, he talked about his dreams of opening a music shop, somewhere that felt like home, a place where people could find instruments and stories. You ever think about just making a change? He asked, swirling his cup. All the time. I admitted, but change is scary, especially when you don't know what's on the other side. He nodded, his voice soft. Exactly, but sometimes you've got to take a chance, even if it's just for a song. We talked for hours, more than I expected, but it felt like we were catching up on years of missed stories. I told him about my own dreams, the ones I shoved down beneath the daily grind, and he listened, really listened, in a way that made me feel seen. After that night, things shifted. Our meetings became more than chance encounters on the platform. We started texting, sharing songs and silly photos, little glimpses into our worlds. Luca sent me a clip of him playing a tune he'd written, and I found myself humming it when I was alone, the melody threading through my thoughts like a secret. One evening, we found ourselves walking through a neighborhood park after a late-night coffee run, the city lights flickering like stars above us. So, I said, glancing over, do you think this is how stories start? Random songs on train platforms and coffee dates? He laughed softly. Maybe. Or maybe it's just the start of something real. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that the music, the moments, the way we fit together in this noisy city was more than coincidence. But even as I felt it, the doubt lingered. What if he was just passing through like so many others? What if this was a beautiful pause before things slipped away? That night, I found myself standing at the same platform again, the city humming around me, waiting not for a train, but for Luca. When he appeared, accordion in hand, his smile was brighter than ever. Hey, he said, breath visible in the crisp air. Hey, I replied, heart pounding. He began playing, the notes wrapping around us like a warm embrace. And for the first time, I reached out, taking his hand in mine, steadying myself. The music swelled, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't just waiting anymore. I was moving forward. With him. Our hands stayed linked even after the last note faded, like neither of us wanted to let go just yet. The platform around us was still crowded, but suddenly it felt like we were in our own little bubble, the city noise muffled to a soft hum. I looked over at Luca, and for the first time, I wasn't just seeing the guy with the accordion. I saw the person who'd slowly crept into my thoughts and made me imagine things I'd tried to keep tucked away. Did you mean to do that? I asked, my voice a little shaky. He shrugged, but there was this spark in his eyes, like he was daring me to admit I wanted it too. Maybe. I figured if I was going to keep playing for you, I might as well make it official. I laughed quietly, heart thudding. Official, huh? I like the sound of that. He grinned, squeezing my hand gently. So what happens now? Do we just keep showing up on platforms and pretending this isn't the best thing that's happened in a long time? Well, I said, tilting my head and trying to hide how nervous I was. We could try to be more than commuters who happen to meet between trains. His smile softened, and he stepped a little closer. I'd like that. There was no dramatic declaration or grand gesture, just the quiet certainty that I wanted to keep walking forward with Luca, wherever that might lead. Over the next few weeks, our lives started to intertwine in ways that felt natural but exhilarating. We traded playlists, shared meals at tiny hole-in-the-wall places, and spent lazy Sunday afternoons sprawled on park benches. Him playing the accordion, while I traced patterns on the worn leather bellows. It was strange how something as simple as music could build a bridge between two people who might have otherwise been strangers forever. One night, after a late dinner in his tiny apartment cluttered with sheet music and old photographs, Luca pulled out a folded piece of paper. I've been working on a song, he said, eyes flicking up to meet mine. Would you want to hear it? I nodded, sitting forward, suddenly feeling like a kid waiting to unwrap a present. He began to play, fingers moving with practiced ease, the melody more vulnerable this time, quieter, like he was opening a part of himself that usually stayed hidden. When the last note lingered in the air, I found myself holding my breath. Luca looked at me, searching my face. It's about taking chances and finding someone who listens. I smiled, swallowing the lump in my throat. That's how I feel about you. He reached out, brushing a stray hair from my forehead again, that simple touch making my stomach flip. We're writing a pretty good story, huh? Yeah, I agreed. One worth sticking around for. But even as things felt right, I couldn't shake the flicker of doubt that crept in during quiet moments. The fear that this fragile thing we were building might crumble. I'd been burned before, and the idea of losing someone who'd become so important terrified me. One evening, as we walked home beneath the flickering streetlights, I finally voiced it. Luca, what if this doesn't last? What if the music fades, or you walk away? He stopped, looking at me with the seriousness that made my heart ache. Eli, I won't lie. Nothing's guaranteed. But I'm here because I want to be. Because you're not just a song I play for the crowd. You're the one I want to listen to. I let out a shaky breath, the weight in my chest easing. I want that too. I'm just scared sometimes. He pulled me close, arms wrapping around me like a shield. We'll be scared together. And in that embrace, I realized that maybe love wasn't about never being afraid. It was about finding someone who makes those fears easier to face. That night, as I lay in bed replaying the day's moments, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just waiting for the next train anymore. I was ready to ride wherever this journey took us, with Luca's accordion song leading the way. It wasn't like our lives suddenly became this perfect romantic fairy tale. Far from it. But for the first time in a while, the rough edges felt less jagged, and the silence between us was full of promise instead of something unspoken and heavy. Luca and I started carving out a space for us that didn't revolve around the train platform, though that place remained our little sanctuary. One Friday night, a couple of weeks after that conversation under the streetlights, Luca surprised me by inviting me to a small gig at a local bar. Nothing big. Just a handful of musicians playing folk and jazz. The kind of place where people smiled at the music and at each other. I was nervous. It was one thing to meet him on the train platform or sit in his apartment. It was another to show up in his world, where other people could see us. When we arrived, the place was warm and dim, the kind of cozy dive where you could hear every note and every whispered lyric. Luca carried his accordion like a treasure, and I watched as he set up on the tiny stage. The nerves I'd been feeling now, tangled with something else. Pride. He caught my eye from the stage and smiled. That same crooked grin that had pulled me in from the start. When he started playing, it was like the whole room held its breath. His fingers moved with a fluidity that made the music feel alive, like it was breathing alongside him. After the set, he came off the stage, cheeks flushed and eyes shining. So, what do you think? He asked, nudging me playfully. I grinned, heart racing. You were amazing. He laughed, that easy sound that made me feel like everything was going to be okay. Then, with a little hesitation, he reached for my hand, weaving our fingers together. Later, as we walked home beneath the quiet streetlights, Luca said, "You know, I'm really glad you came." "It means a lot." I squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you asked me." Those nights out, the shared meals, the laughter, it all made me realize how much I wanted to be part of his life. But with that realization came the inevitable questions swirling in my mind. How much of myself was I willing to risk? How deep could I let this go before I got hurt? One evening, it all came crashing down in the form of a text from an ex, a reminder of the past I'd been trying to forget. I stared at the screen, the old doubts creeping back like shadows. Luca noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, voice low. I hesitated, then showed him the message. His brows furrowed, but instead of retreating, he pulled me close. "Hey," he whispered, "you don't have to carry that alone." In that moment, I realized I'd been so guarded for so long that opening up felt like stepping off a cliff. But Luca was there, steady beneath me. "I want to try," I told him, voice barely above a whisper. Really try." He smiled, and that smile was all the encouragement I needed. We started talking about the future, not in vague terms, but real plans. Weekend trips, visiting his family in Italy, maybe even looking for a place to live together. It felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. One lazy Sunday, sprawled out in the park with the sun warming our faces, Luca pulled out his accordion and started playing that song he'd written, the one about taking chances. I listened, heart swelling, knowing that whatever happened, this was real. As the city buzzed quietly around us, I leaned into him and thought about how a chance encounter on a rainy train platform had turned into something I never expected, but couldn't imagine losing. And for once, I wasn't just waiting for the next train. I was ready to ride this one all the way. Some nights, when the city's noise quiets down just enough, I still find myself standing on that same train platform, the place where it all began. Not because I'm waiting for a train, but because it feels like the spot where my life shifted, where a melody played just for me broke through the noise. Luca and I have settled into a rhythm that's messy, imperfect, but ours. We've moved in together into a small apartment that smells like old books and coffee, with a corner dedicated to his accordion and stacks of sheet music. It's not a fancy place, but it's filled with laughter and the kind of quiet moments that make all the uncertainty worth it. Last week, Luca played that song he wrote, the one about taking chances, at a local festival. I was there, front and center, watching the way his fingers told stories through the music, and feeling this swell of pride and gratitude. Because he didn't just play for a crowd that day. He played for me, and for the future we're building together. I think back to that first night, standing awkwardly with a pounding heart as he played under the platform lights. I wasn't looking for love or some grand romantic moment, just a way to get through the day. But sometimes, life surprises you. Sometimes, a stranger with an accordion can play a song that pulls you out of the ordinary and into something real. There's no magic formula, no perfect script, just two people learning to listen, not only to music, but to each other. Learning to trust that maybe, just maybe, the noise will fade enough for something beautiful to grow. So yeah, I still come back to that platform sometimes, not because I'm searching for something lost, but because I'm remembering how far I've come. How a simple song on a train platform led me to the most unexpected, wonderful part of my life. And that's a tune I plan to keep playing.